Any a Pride and Prejudice film adaptations, and this is a Pride and Prejudice. That wasn't already obvious. Murder mystery. It's a retelling. So first I'm going to show off the cover because I did get the Bookish box subscription. So this is the interior cover. I think I kind of like it more than this one. So I'm probably going to flip it over in a second. But anyway, it follows Lizzie, of course, and she seeks to prove herself to her father, who's a barrister. She wants to be barrister for him, and he's like, okay, you have to prove using logic then, and I'll hire you. Easy peasy, right? Not so. Not for a girl during this time period, because the time period's the same, the characters are the same. If you are familiar with any form of Pride and Prejudice, you know who are the bad guys and who are the good guys. You're aware of it. Now, that being said, there is a level of predictability to it, just because you know who these characters are if you're familiar. Nevertheless, the story is completely 100% unpredictable from beginning to end. I loved it. I think this was such an exceptionally well-written novel. I loved the pacing of it. So I'm going to start there. The pacing of this book was brilliantly done. It builds up the mystery, and you're following Lizzie. And I love these chapter titles too. One, in which our heroine is wrong and acquires a new lead. You know, the new lead is she has to prove herself to her father. How is she going to do that? Well, she's going to find a case. And so she does. And it's a murder case of all things. She's like, oh yeah, totally going to do this. It's going to be such a challenge. I'm going to love it. And this will prove to everyone that I'm totally capable of everything. And the accused is Mr. Bingley. If you don't know Mr. Bingley from the original, he is the one who becomes smitten with her sister Jane. Now, that's not really essential to the story, and I do like that this is a kind of condensed version of the Jane Austen story. You've still got those central characters, but because it's condensed, I think the reason I love it so much is because it keeps that pacing up. It keeps that momentum up. It's rising, 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 because Lizzie is meeting all these bumps in the road. You know, she's meeting a lot of walls, and I think it's really interesting to see how she goes about getting her evidence for this murder. Granted, in today's day and age, I think a lot of this evidence would be circumstantial at best. My mom went to law school, so I know a little bit about law because she does still work for a law firm, so she does talk to me about it. So I'm going to give her this book and be like, I find a lot of this evidence circumstantial at best. I want you to tell me how you feel about it. It's definitely a book I want to share with her. I think she will enjoy it, but regardless, I did love how that pacing and that rising tension and that momentum just kept going forward, and it balances off with the characters because you are trying to solve this mystery with Lizzie. You know, she knows there's something not right. There's an instinct. She's got this gut. She's like, there's just something not right. There's something not sitting well. And she's observant, and that's what I love about her. Her observance. You know, she sees a lot that even we as readers, I don't think we would have caught on if it weren't for Lizzie. You're just sitting there, you're reading like, huh, I didn't think about that. Good job, Lizzie. So you are engaged with this narrative because the author writes it in a way that draws you in without giving away anything. It is 100% unpredictable from beginning to end. I did not see that ending coming. I did not see half those things that were going to happen, and I was like, wow, mind blown. And I love a good murder mystery. I especially love the ones that are not predictable, because if you can solve it with it halfway through the book, you're just like, why am I reading this anymore? Kind of just to see if you're right at that point, in my personal experience. But for this story, I was reading it to solve this mystery. I'm like, I need to know what's going to happen. And the author doesn't really give away a lot. She drops little hints. Again, with the rising tension, she's dropping these hints and she's dropping this evidence, and you're kind of piecing together the pieces, but you don't know the whole story or the whole scope, not until the very end. That's what I loved. It's like an episode of Monk, in a way. Here is how it happened. Here's what happened. I love Monk. But that's how it was for me. You're getting these bits, you're getting these pieces. You really don't know who the murderer is until that ending. There's lots of red herrings, you know. The story is pulling the reader into these different directions without losing the reader. You know, sometimes when authors do that, you're kind of taken out of the story because you're just wondering, like, where am I going with this? But here, you are engaged with it because of how it's structured, because of how the author's just pulling your direction to this character over here. And I think that Price is kind of relying on your knowledge of Pride and Prejudice, the story, to, I want to say hinder, but not really hinder you. She's relying on you to make your own assumptions, I think, based on what you already know of Pride and Prejudice. But she doesn't stay true to that. She uses that to her advantage to be like, I'm going to flip it here for you. I'm going to flip it here for you. And I love that. I like how it kept that pacing going. It was funny. It was quirky. The dynamics were top notch. It was thoroughly engaging, 100%. I loved this book. Is this even a review anymore, or is it me just fangirling? I absolutely adored this book. And I love how the heart of Jane Austen still exists in the story with those characters. You have Lizzie, you have Mr. Darcy, you have Bingley, you have Jane. I like how they all balance each other out. You have, God, what was his name again? I want to say Wickman. Yeah, I wanted to say Wingley, but I'm like, that's not right. Wickman, you have Wickman, and you're just like, okay, no, Wickman's not a good guy, but how does he play into this? So she's kind of relying on you having some knowledge, I think, but I don't think you have to be familiar with Pride and Prejudice at all in order to enjoy this story. Again, I've never read the book personally. I've only seen movie adaptations. So that is what I know. I'm pulling on my knowledge from those movies that I've seen. And we all know movies are just like a surface of what the book is. So I don't think you have to have read Pride and Prejudice to appreciate the characters in this novel, because you already know Lizzie in a way. She's headstrong, she's formidable, she's just not going to let anyone push her around. She's just like, who are you again? Who do you think you are? And that's why her and Darcy do butt heads, because he's the solicitor, you know, working Bingley's case, you know. Again, family friend. He's working it. He has a lot to prove. And I, again, enjoyed that. I liked their dynamic and how they're butting heads. I do like the intellect between them. And I think it was really well done because they're both prideful. They're both not willing to accept help from the other. They're just like staring each other down, like sizing each other up, like, I'm watching you, man. Don't get in my way. That's basically how they are for about half the book, but it's fun. It's fun because he doesn't want Lizzie on this case. And she's like, well, I don't care. Bingley does, so I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And if it weren't for her, I don't think Darcy would have won the case either. However, if it weren't for Darcy helping her out in certain situations, I don't think she would have gotten as far as she would have. So they do become, you know, reluctant co-workers, you know, reluctant, there's like a reluctant peace there. And from that forms a friendship. And of course, that romance. Everyone knows Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy end up together. I mean, it's just like common knowledge. So that does happen. But the story doesn't focus on that. at all. And that's probably why I like this, because I'm not a huge fan of like romance heavy books. I don't mind romance in a book, but I'm not about to go to the romance section. That's not me. That's never been me. I'm just, no thanks. Sorry. I just don't like. I'm a sci-fi, fantasy, murder mystery kind of gal. And that's where we're going to stick with. But I don't mind romance in a book. So I like how it kind of takes a step back to be like, yeah, there's this romance. I'm going to develop this romance for the readers because it is what's expected. But it doesn't take over the central focus of the story. The story is, at its core, a murder mystery. It is reminiscent of stories like Lady Sherlock or even Sherlock himself. Like I said, I was thinking of Monk by the end of the book. I'm like, here's how it happened. Here's what happened, as Monk would say. So that's where I was when I was reading this book. And I blew through it. Loved it, absolutely. From beginning to end, it was amazing. Thoroughly enjoyed it. So, as if this is going to be any surprise to anyone, I'm going to go ahead and give this book 5 stars. I highly recommend it. If you're a Jane Austen fan, you're going to love it. If you're a murder mystery fan, you're going to love it. If you like strong female characters, you're going to love it. I think it was well done on every single level. Those dynamics were well done. That pacing, that mystery was unpredictable. There are so many elements that just keep you as the reader guessing that you don't know how it's going to end. Even if you are familiar with Pride and Prejudice, you still have no idea how this is going to end. And that's what I love, the unpredictable nature of this story. Can't stress that enough. It was such a well-written story. I'm so looking forward to reading more of this series. You know, there's Manslaughter Park, and there's Sense and Second Degree Murder coming up. Those are the next 2 books in this series. So I'm here for that. You can just put me down for a pre-order, please. I'm here. So once again, this was Pride and Premeditation by Terza Price. Definitely give it 5 stars. Please remember to purchase this book from your local bookseller if you want to go ahead and purchase it. I will include a link in the description to bookshop.org, but you don't have to purchase from there. You can do IndieBound, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, Book Depository, just whatever you do. Please support your local bookseller and your local online book retailer, and try to avoid purchasing books off of Amazon. They get enough business. If money's tight, please check out this book from your local library. Libraries are a great resource from the community. You can get ebook library cards or e-digital library cards, and you can get ebooks and audiobooks from your local library. So it's really great. I love it. And on that note, I hope you all will continue to support me by liking this video, sharing it with all your book-loving friends, and please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You can also support me on Buy Me a Coffee or by purchasing one of my handmade candles. There are links to that in the description below. Have a great, wonderful rest of your day, and as always, happy reading.